Friday of the 15th week in Ordinary Time.
A reading from the book of Exodus. Although Moses and Aaron performed various wonders in Pharaoh's presence, the Lord made Pharaoh obstinate, and he would not let the children of Israel leave his land. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, "This month shall stand at the head of your calendar. You shall reckon it the first month of the year. Tell the whole community of Israel, on the 10th of this month, every one of your families must procure for itself a lamb, one apiece for each household. If a family is too small for a whole lamb, it shall join the nearest household in procuring one, and shall share in the lamb, in proportion to the number of persons who partake it. The lamb must be a year old, male, and without blemish. You may take it from either the sheep or the goats. You shall keep it until the 14th day of this month, and then, with the whole assembly of Israel present, it shall be slaughtered during the evening twilight. They shall take some of its blood and apply it to the 2 doorposts and the lintel of every house in which they partake of the lamb. That same night they shall eat its roasted flesh, with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. It shall not be eaten raw or boiled, but roasted whole, with its head and shanks and inner organs. None of it must be kept beyond the next morning. Whatever is left over in the morning shall be burned up. This is how you are to eat it: with your loins girt, sandals on your feet, and your staff in hand. You shall eat like those who are in flight. It is the Passover of the Lord. For on this same night I will go through Egypt, striking down every firstborn of the land, both man and beast, and executing judgment on all the gods of Egypt. I, the Lord. But the blood will mark the houses where you are. Seeing the blood, I will pass over you. Thus, when I strike the land of Egypt, no destructive blow will come upon you. This day shall be a memorial feast for you, which all your generations shall celebrate, with pilgrimage to the Lord as a perpetual institution." The word of the Lord.
The responsorial psalm. The response is, "I will take the cup of salvation and call on the name of the Lord. How shall I make a return to the Lord for all the good he has done for me? The cup of salvation I will take up, and I will call upon the name of the Lord. I will take the cup of salvation and call on the name of the Lord. Precious in the eyes of the Lord is the death of his faithful ones. I am your servant, the son of your handmaid. You have loosed my bonds. I will take the cup of salvation and call on the name of the Lord. To you will I offer sacrifice of thanksgiving, and I will call upon the name of the Lord. My vows to the Lord I will pay in the presence of all his people. I will take the cup of salvation and call on the name of the Lord."
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus was going through a field of grain on the Sabbath. His disciples were hungry and began to pick the heads of grain and eat them. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to him, "See, your disciples are doing what is unlawful to do on the Sabbath." He said to them, "Have you not read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? How he went into the house of God and ate the bread of offering, which neither he nor his companions, but only the priests could lawfully eat? Or have you not read in the law that on the Sabbath the priests serving in the temple violate the Sabbath and are innocent? I say to you, something greater than the temple is here. If you knew what this meant, I desire mercy, not sacrifice, you would not have condemned these innocent men. For the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. The Gospel of the Lord.
Friday of the 15th week in Ordinary Time. The first reading comes from Exodus 11:10 to 12:14. Pharaoh was made obstinate by God, and the response that God gives is a series of plagues. Now this passage takes place after the first 9 plagues, just before the 10th plague, which will be the death of the firstborn in Egypt. The Lord tells Moses that this act which he is about to perform will be commemorated. It'll be the first month of the year. Now that's very interesting because Passover, which is what we're talking about, takes place in March, while the beginning of the Jewish year is in September. We can explain this because it seems as if when the Jewish people went into exile in Babylon, 587 to 539 BC, they adopted the Babylonian calendar, which began in September. And in fact, that calendar actually fits better given the climate of Israel, because in September you get the first autumn rains. That's when you plant the crop. So it's very clear why it would be called the beginning of the year. We hear about the lamb that's supposed to be slain and used for the meal. Now it's a year-old lamb, either a sheep or a goat. Originally we believe that Passover, Pesach in Hebrew, was a Jewish agricultural feast. It marked the birth of the new crop of lambs because Pesach means leaping. It probably referred to the jumping around of the newborn lambs. That would be why a year-old lamb, one of the old crop, would be sacrificed to honor God as the new crop is being born. This event in Egypt historified this feast, that it changed it from a purely agricultural feast to a historic feast to commemorate the liberation of the Jewish slaves from their slavery in Egypt. It's to take place on the 14th of the month, and the people are supposed to eat the meal already girded, ready to travel. Now that makes sense because the very next morning they would be leaving, but for Jewish people, they would dress up that way as they read the account year after year. The message being that when they read the account of the Passover, they were actually reliving it. It wasn't an event that was taking place in the past. It was something that they were participating in. And that's very much the idea that we use when we celebrate the Eucharist. We're not redoing Jesus' sacrifice. We're making ourselves present to the Last Supper, to Jesus dying on the cross, and to the resurrection. And the people of Israel were supposed to celebrate this as a memorial feast for all times. Now, we're really not sure if the Jewish people celebrated this all throughout their history. In fact, once in a while we hear that the kings had to reinstitute the celebration because the Jewish people didn't know how to do it, hadn't been doing it continuously. The Gospel is from Matthew 12, 1-8. Jesus' disciples are eating grain in the fields on the Sabbath. Now, the Pharisees were very scrupulous about the law. They tried to build a fence around the law to take it to its widest possible extent, to make sure they never broke a part of the law. So they considered eating grain in the field as reaping, as harvesting the grain. The irony is, this action was allowed. It was interpreted as something that was allowed as long as you weren't really collecting the harvest, as long as you were only eating as much as you could eat at that point. But the Pharisees complained because Jesus is not following their strict regulations. What is Jesus' response? We know that there's exceptions to the rule. For example, didn't David eat the showbread, the bread that only priests could eat, when he was fleeing from Saul? Doesn't a priest in the temple break the Sabbath rules because he cleans up the temple, he performs the sacrifice, which ordinarily would be considered work? And then Jesus says, God desires mercy, not sacrifice. This is a continuous theme in the Gospel of Matthew. The truly righteous person is not the one who keeps the laws to the letter, but the one who is compassionate, merciful. And Jesus says something that the Pharisees would have found outrageous at the end of this passage. For the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. Who is the Lord of the Sabbath? God alone. Who is the Son of Man? Jesus. So Jesus has taken upon himself prerogatives that belong to God alone. That itself would have been considered blasphemy by the Jewish people. But Jesus proclaims it openly because he is in fact not only the Son of Man, he's the only begotten Son of God. And may God bless us.
Thank you.